morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We have, what I hear, 23 kids over there in that little room. Isn't that great? God is just doing such a wonderful thing. And then the worship this morning, y'all did a fantastic job. God is just blessing us week after week. And I'm just so thankful to be a part of it. Let's just thank Him right now. Let's just go and just pray and just say thank you. God, thank you. Thank you that you have provided this ministry, that we can all partake of it, that we can all enjoy it. Come to you and learn more about you and bless you. And I pray today that as we study, that this isn't just a sermon, it's not a Bible study, this is worship. This is corporate, public worship where your people come together to praise you. And I pray for all of the saints here today, that our faith would be edified, that we would be strengthened, lifted up, and become more like you. And God, for those who are here with us today who they haven't yet begun that journey of following you, that you would show them the gospel, what it means to have faith, that they would believe in you with all their hearts, and that you would be saved. In your name we pray. Amen. If you have your Bibles, I want you to open up to Mark chapter 9. Mark chapter 9. I think this is our... No, wait, we got one more after this. This one and one more in this chapter. And as you turn there, find your place, I've been thinking about faith this week, which is the topic of the message. And after service, we're going to pray for some of the ladies who are off to Israel. And I was talking about that at home, and Lily and I were talking, and she said, what do you think? Are you nervous about me going all the way over to Israel? And of course, that's a long ways off, and she's going to be not with us. It's the farthest she's ever been without us. But no, I'm really not that nervous about it because I feel like God's got it under control. He's as in control of Israel as He is in Michigan. And there's just no reason for us to worry about it. And so we decided we're not going to be scared because not one word of all the promises that He's given us will fail. He is a God who is faithful. He keeps every single one of His promises. And I'm thankful that it came easily in that instance. But it's not always that easy, is it? I mean, every time I complain about something, I'm showing a little bit of a lack of faith. Every time I worry about something, it's just a little bit of a lack of faith. Sometimes we do. We have that struggle, almost like a battle within ourselves, to really believe that God can do and will do what He says He's going to do. And that's what I want to talk about today. We're going to read a story in Mark chapter 9 about a little boy who was possessed by a demon. And it's unfortunate because everybody in the story struggles to believe. We'll see. We'll go through all the characters and just see that they really had a hard time believing Jesus. But what I want to see from that is, first of all, we're all in the same battle. You and I have the exact same kind of thing happening where we're struggling to believe Jesus. Maybe we're not as far along, in degree where we're actually possessed by a demon, but we have a spiritual war going on around us, a battle for our faith. And so we're in that battle that Jesus, that's the second thing I want you to see, is that Jesus helps us to win. And at the end of the day, what I want you to know is that it's absolutely true that Jesus gives us victory over unbelief. He will give you victory over unbelief. So wherever you are today, this message is for you. We saw that a little bit last week when, if you were here, you knew about the transfiguration. Jesus took 3 of His disciples up on top of a mountain and showed them His glory. His face shined and His clothes shined. That was an attempt to help them with their unbelief. Then they go back down the mountain, and that's what we come to in Mark chapter 9, verse 14. Jesus and 3 of the disciples come back down the mountain. And when they came to the other disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and scribes arguing with them. Now the scribes were the teachers of the law, religious leaders. And so they were real sticklers. They didn't believe in Jesus anyway. So I imagine this had something to do with the demon-possessed boy. They're arguing. And then verse 15, immediately all the crowd, when they saw Him, they look over and say, hey, there's Jesus coming down right here. They were greatly amazed and ran up to Him and greeted Him. Now that word for amazed is only used 3 other times, and it's all in Mark. And the other 3 times, one is Jesus was distressed about the crucifixion, so he sweat blood. He was amazed. He was distressed, so he sweat great drops of blood. The other time was the people walk into what's supposed to be the empty tomb, and there's an angel sitting there, and they were amazed. They were terrified. And the angel says to him, hey, don't be terrified, don't be amazed. That's it. That's the only three. So all three connotations of this word are not good. It's trouble. This crowd, they're not like, oh, hey, oh, it's Jesus, everybody. They were going, hey, we got a problem. There's Jesus. Let's go fix this. So they ran up and they greeted him. And in verse 16, he asked them, what are you arguing about with them? And someone from the crowd answered, teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, Jesus, it's awful. It throws him down on the ground, and he foams, and he grinds his teeth, and he becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able. And Jesus answered them, oh, faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? And then he says, bring him to me. And they brought the boy to him, and when the spirit saw Jesus, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked the father, how long has this been happening to him? The father said, since childhood. And it's often cast him into fire and water, trying to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus asked him, if you can, all things are possible to the one who believes. And immediately, did you love that? Immediately, the father cried out and said, I believe. I do believe. Help my unbelief. And when Jesus saw that a great crowd came running together, so people are coming closer and it's getting bigger, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, you mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse. So that most of the crowd said, I think he's dead. Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, why could we not cast it out? And he said to them, this kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer. Now, the first thing that I want to point out here for you to notice is that there is a battle to keep us from trusting Jesus. There's a battle to keep us from fully trusting in him. This terrible thing that happened to this kid, it was a terrible thing. Some people say, I've read in places, oh, it looks like epilepsy or something. You're sure it shares similarities with epilepsy, but epilepsy doesn't convulse at the sight of Jesus. This thing is called a spirit. This is a spirit, something that is taken over this boy and has a mission. And what is its mission? What does it want to do more than anything else? It wants to destroy him. It wants to throw him into the fire or the water. That's not epilepsy. This thing has a mission. It hates the boy and it wants to hurt him. And it makes perfect sense that it would be this way, since the mission of Satan, he comes to do three things. Anybody know what they are? He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Yeah. So here we see it in action. He's coming and he's trying to steal, kill, and destroy everything he can. And it's all in this little boy. And he wants to shatter faith. Not just the faith of the boy, but the faith of everybody who sees it. Because that is what Satan does. When Paul is writing his letter to the Corinthians, he describes Satan as the god of this world. The little g, little god. He's not out of control of God. He sure seems to have dominion here right now, doesn't he? He rules people's hearts. And it says that the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ. Satan's mission is to blind people, to destroy their faith. We actually see that. You know the story of Job? Job was way, way back. He's in the Old Testament, but actually he's not even in the right place. He goes back even further in Genesis somewhere. Job had a lot of stuff. He was a very wealthy man. He had a big family, he had a lot of animals, which back then that was very important. That's how you measured your wealth. He had buildings and servants and all this stuff. And it's said that God is in heaven, and Satan comes up there to him one day, and he says, God, you know the only reason that Job is as faithful to you as he is? And Job was a very faithful man, always offering sacrifices even for what might have happened. You know, my kids might have cursed God in their hearts, so let's offer a sacrifice for that. Satan says the only reason he's that way is because you're his good luck charm, because you give him so much. You have this hedge of protection around him, and I promise you, if you were to take that hedge of protection down, well, I can promise you that he will curse you to your face. Job's faith is nothing. He'll change. Let me go down there and shatter his faith, and let's just see what happens. See if I can do it. Well, of course, you know the story, right? He goes down there. Job loses everything. The only thing he has left is a nagging wife. Wants him to curse God and die. Satan does the same thing to us, though. Not the nagging wife part. I'm in trouble. One of the verses talks about how he throws fiery darts at us. He comes in there with these fiery darts, throws them. You're not good enough. God doesn't really love you that much. Haven't you repented of this sin too many times? You don't believe, do you? God's not really going to come through. He throws these fiery darts. Another place he's described as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. He's not just after this little boy, and he wasn't just after Job. He's after every single one of us to shatter our faith. And it can, if we're being honest, it can be effective. Everyone in this story lacked faith. All of them, except Jesus. I'm not sure about the boy. But the scribes were there. The teachers of the law, the ones who should have seen Jesus plainly as the Messiah. And they flat out refused to believe in him. They're arguing every step of the way. They reject him and try to thwart everything he does. But even the disciples failed here. It's really strange to me because Jesus earlier in Mark had sent them out on a mission. There were 12 disciples, and he said, look, I'm going to send you out in 6 groups of 2. And I want you to go through all this region, and I want you to go and heal the sick and cast out demons and all of the stuff that we do. And they did, and they came back, and they were celebrating Jesus. We cast out demons. We told them to leave, and they left. And so here they come, and here comes his father. He said, we got this son. I said, well, sure, we can do that. That's just routine. They go to cast it out, but nothing happens. I don't know. He says there at the end that it was because this kind only comes out by prayer. What does that mean? Well, Matthew actually gives us a little more information. When Jesus is talking to his disciples, he says, they said, why didn't he come out? He says, it's because of your little faith. Because you don't have enough faith. You weren't praying. What were they doing? In my imagination, they were saying, oh, we got this. No reason to ask God for help. We can do it ourselves. And it just didn't happen. And they were baffled by it. But even the Father, who comes to Jesus, the whole point was, I'm going to take my son to Jesus so he can heal him. And when he finally sees Jesus, what's his concern? If you can. If you're actually able. And if you're actually willing. And then the crowd standing around, they're all agitated at the beginning. And then when Jesus does perform the miracle, what is it that they think actually happened? Thought he died. Oh, Jesus messed that one up. He put way too much juice into kicking out that demon. Nobody believes. And so as a whole, he calls them a faithless generation. A generation without faith. And that word, generation, it means a lot of things in Greek, but in a context like this, he's talking about humanity. You as a people. My disciples, the scribes, the Father, the crowd, you as a whole, as people, are faithless. Are we really any different from them, though? We're in this story. We struggle to believe. There are a lot of things that we struggle to believe. I want to tell you something that my wife and I are, as I was thinking about this message, where am I struggling to believe? Where am I having impatience or whatever? You know, we would like to have a home. We've got an idea of what that home is going to look like. God hasn't given it to us yet. It doesn't look like God's going to give it to us anytime soon. And so now we have this choice. Can we start getting frustrated at God? Can we say, well, God, this just isn't working. You need to provide it how we want it. Or can we say, you know what? God's best for us. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, he's got a really big, nice mansion we're going to get for really cheap. That's not what God's best might be. God's best might be, you don't really know how to depend on me yet, and so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you in a position where you're forced to do it. Because I want you to come around in faith. Can I accept that? Well, there's the battle. The battle is, can you trust God's timing? Do you know that it'll come when it's supposed to come? And don't worry about it until then. Do you know that he holds the future? Do you believe that he's good and that he gives all good gifts? Do you believe his promises and that he gives direction? There's the battle. So can you just be content where you are? And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're saying, okay, this is God's provision for today. We're just going to be happy with this. And on the days we're not, God, would you forgive us? Help our unbelief. But it's not just that. I mean, we all struggle with things. Maybe you've got a sin that just seems to overtake you. A constant struggle with this one thing that you've repented for that 10 million times and no hope inside of it ever being completely won. Do you believe that God has freed you from sin? How can we who died to sin live in it any longer? Jesus says, I am your master now. You're no longer slaves to sin. You're mine. You don't have to live that way. Well, do you believe that he can? Do you believe and know that he has the power? Can you rest in his promises? Can you just say, okay, I know I'm not ever going to be perfect, but God has given me victory. Sometimes we get so frustrated with ourselves, or we get so frustrated with the circumstances that we want to force it. This is the thing I want, I'm just going to go out and get it, and I'm not going to wait on God anymore. And it's kind of like Abraham and Hagar forcing a child that God promised, delayed to deliver. And Abraham says, well, we're done waiting around. Let's just go do it ourselves. Or we give in. We just reject the battle. I'm not going to say who. One of our children, when young, 6, 7 years old. Jenny goes in the room and she's cleaning up. And there's this smell. What is that smell? It smells like rotten. What is this? So she starts searching around the room for it, and she found it. Remember this? What was it? What'd you find? Rotten fruit. Apple cores, banana peels, all eaten and then shoved under the dresser.
Dreams.
She pulls it all out. She says, what is this? And the kid responsible says, this is just who I am. Sometimes we're kind of like that with our sin, aren't we? This is just who I am. You're just going to have to accept it and put up with the stink. Can we trust that God can do the things that we can't do? Or do we only trust in the things we can see and the things we can influence? Can just know, God, you've got it. But our faith is so much like that Father's. I do believe, but it's almost like that guy who beats alcoholism, but he keeps one around just in case. I just might need to go back to it. You got one foot, I'm in the house, God, but I've got one foot just outside the door, just in case you don't come through. That way, I've got a way out. There's a battle to keep us from believing Jesus, from trusting in his promises. But here's the gospel. Did you see the gospel in this passage? He wants you to know that he gives victory over unbelief. Look at how he does this when he helps us win the battle. The first thing is he rebukes everybody. And you might say, well, that's not good, is it? That's not the gospel. Oh no, a rebuke is the gospel. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. More trusted are the wounds of a friend than the kisses of the enemy. It's better to have your best friend punch you in the face than to have your enemy kiss you on the cheek. Because your best friend, he's doing it because you need it. Jesus says, oh, faithless generation, how long am I going to put up with you? How long am I going to be here with you? He was grieved. He was weary. Their sin and their constant disbelief affected his emotions. Our God has those kinds of emotions, but he wants to correct us. And so, what he says, and this is the gospel, he says, how long am I going to put up with you people? Bring him to me. If I were saying it, it could have possibly been, how long am I going to put up with you people? You don't deserve anything until you get it right. But that's not what Jesus said. He said, how long? Bring him here. Let me handle this. I'm so thankful he's that way with me. God, I just don't know if I can do it. Come to me. God, you don't know I've sinned so many times this week and I've failed so many places. Come to me. You faithless generation, come to me and be healed. Come boldly, because you're not going to be rejected. You're going to get corrected, but not rejected. And that father comes up to him and he says, if you can, and Jesus rebukes him too. What do you mean, if I can? Don't you know that all things are possible with God? So everything is possible to one who believes. You'll notice he doesn't say all things are guaranteed to the one who believes. This isn't a name it and claim it kind of passage. He says all things are possible, though. It's a question of can. Can God do this or not? He says, well, sure, God can do this. And that father, he's just taking little baby steps, and he's on this journey, he's on this path of gaining victory. And so he says to Jesus, I do believe. I believe you. I'm here. But help my unbelief. Fill in the gaps for me. I almost think of it like, I've heard of you. I've been at home and I've been hearing all these things that are happening all around the areas around me. And I thought, well, if he can heal all those other people, maybe he can heal my son too. And so I decided to bring him here. And it reminds me again of Job. Because Job had that hedge of protection removed. And everything that could have happened, happened. He's sitting there and he's friendless. Except for he's got three friends that are just terrible friends. And he's got one friend who's saying the truth. And God shows up. Job's complaining the whole time, God doesn't have the right to do this to me. I'm righteous. Why would God do this? He doesn't have the right to do this. And God shows up and he says, I tell you what, why don't you stand up and gird your loins, because I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to answer me like a man. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Do you know where the storehouses of the hail are, Job? Job, does the lightning report to you before it strikes? You know any of this stuff, Job? No, Job, you don't know any of it. Answer me. It's a rebuke. It's a pretty stern rebuke. When Job had had enough of it, when God had finally finished, Job just said, okay, hold on. And I love this verse. Listen to this. he says to God, I had heard of you with the hearing of ears. I had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Now I have personal experience with you. You're right. If you want to take all my stuff, that's your job. You can do that. Here's this father. He's just asking God for the same thing. Would you just help me through my unbelief? Would you just give me something personal so that my eyes can see you personally? And then Jesus took that little boy by the hand. He lifted him up. And he arose. Makes me think of that psalm where he says, you lifted me out of the miry pit and set my feet on a rock. He is free from his affliction. And I'm fascinated that the story ends here. There's no celebration. There's nothing about the Father embraced him and the crowd was awed and the scribes had to hang their heads in shame and leave and the disciples were streaming. None of that. Because the story isn't about those characters. The story is about Jesus. It's about the way that he corrects those that he loves. It's about the way that he shows grace to those who come and he gives victory to those who believe. He does the same thing for us. And he wants you to know that he gives us victory over unbelief. And he wants to help you with your unbelief. What is your battle right now? Or battles? You have many. Is it a sin that you're beset by? You just can't seem to beat it. Would you ask God, help me with my unbelief? Maybe it's believing in him in the first place. I want to come to him. I do believe. I just don't really know what to do or not sure. Help me with my unbelief. Maybe it's a fear that you have. Your health is declining. The job isn't secure. Who knows what's happening with the market, with the nation? You find yourself kind of worked up over those things. Your kids, your marriage. God, help me with my unbelief. I do believe, but help me. Maybe it's a frustration. Something that you wish you could change, but you can't. Or maybe it's a doubt. It's the same thing. Help me with my unbelief. He wants to help you with it. So here's how you can do it. If you want help dealing with this unbelief, start here. Learn the promises of God. Start in the scriptures. When we say read the Bible, it's not so that you can put a check mark beside it. So I read my chapter for today. It's so that you will get in that word and find his gospel. What does he say for you? If all you read is one chapter, just go, okay, where's Jesus in this? Where's the gospel? What's the promise to me in this passage to all the saints? What am I reading? There are so many wonderful promises. How about this one? I will never leave you nor forsake you. Do you believe that promise? And we get so afraid of things that are happening around us. Can we just relax and go, okay, he's never going to leave me nor forsake me? How about this? The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their stronghold in the time of trouble. Do you believe that promise? Help me with my unbelief. The steps of a man are established by the Lord when he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord holds his hand. Everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. You believe that promise? It's a promise. He will swallow up death forever. And the Lord God will wipe away tears from all faces. He wants you to know that he gives you victory over unbelief. So, here's the second thing. Wait on him. Just wait on him. Pray for him. Pray to him for belief. Help my unbelief. And instead, say, God, I don't want to say if you can. What I want to say is, I know you can. I know you can, and so I'm trusting in you. Take me by the hand and lift me up. And then finally, you get to know those promises. And then you get His grace as you wait. Just enjoy what He gives you. Enjoy the spoils of winning this victory. I can't tell you that you're going to get what you want. You might say, well, I really want a house. I can't promise that's going to happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But what I can promise you is that you'll have confidence if you wait on Him. Because He who promised is faithful. You can say, my God is with me. My God gives me the victory. My God protects me. My God guides me. My God feeds me. My God gives me fulfillment. So then you'll have life to the full, despite your circumstances. What I want to do, I want to pray. And I'm going to ask Nancy and them, will y'all come back up? Can you reprise one of those songs? Bob, right over here. Bob, would you raise your hand? Bob's just going to go right over here to the side. And Jeff, where are you, Jeff? Jeff, these are two of our elders. Jeff, would you also just, while we're singing, if you want someone to pray for you, would you go to one of them or come to me? We'll pray for you. Otherwise, let's just sing this song and ask God to help us with our unbelief and to help us to overcome these things that we have to face every day. Jesus, thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your grace and your forgiveness. God, I pray today that you would help us with our unbelief, that we would overcome these things that seem so big but are nothing to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Before we leave, we have a group of ladies going to Israel. You leave out this Thursday, is that right? Would you three come up with me? That's all in our church, right? It's three? Yeah, would you please come up here? We want to pray for them before they go. They're going with Genesis Petoskey. I don't know how many, you know how many people are in the big group? 13 total in the big group. We have to sign Lily away. She's a buyers now. But what I want to do is just real quickly, if you want to say what you're most excited about, and then I'm going to invite anybody who wants to come up here and just pray with them and let's send them off that they have a really blessed time and that the gospel is learned and preached, okay? So anything that anybody here wants to say, I'll just let you say it. What are you most excited about? The food. You're killing me. You're killing me.
The food and just getting to see all the sights and getting to walk the path that you walk.
Yeah.
Walking the path.
Walking the path you
Seeing
walk.
the sights that you saw.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, so walking that path's going to be a great trip. We're really happy for you all. And you know that we're going to be praying for you while you're gone and want to see pictures and hear all about it when you get back, okay? So I'm going to invite you. Any of you who are friends, family, anybody who just wants to come up here and pray, just stand up right now and come on over here with us. We'll pray and then we'll be dismissed, okay? And by the way, Bob and Jeff will also be available after for continued prayer, and then I'll be right outside shaking hands, but I'm happy to pray for you too, okay? God, thank you for all the blessings that we have, that we get to go over to Israel. These ladies get to go over to Israel where you walked and see some of the same things that you saw. God, I pray that this would, number one, be a faith builder for all three. That they would see the places where you have kept your promises and you have worked for your people. God, there's nothing magic or really super special about locations or artifacts. They are kind of cool to be able to see it and go, okay, this is real. My God did this. So I pray that their faith would be strengthened. I pray that as they walk through and see those places where you walked, that they would be encouraged and that it would be practical for their daily lives. I pray that you would give them opportunities to preach the gospel while they're there in Israel, and when they come back, that the sureness of your promises will be so set in their minds that they will know and believe. God, I pray that you bring them back to us safely. I pray that they wouldn't have any sickness or trouble while they're there. But if they do, we know that you have what's best in mind, so I pray that you would teach them through that, and that you alone would be lifted up and glorified. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you all for coming. Lord willing, see you next week.